Welcome to long-form content of Tech Bytes and News. This is a compilation on latest news and articles featured on Hacker News. You can find the original links of articles in the description. Please like and subscribe to support future content. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating historical piece, An Unsteady History of Drunkenness, exploring how societal views on alcohol and its effects on the body have evolved. It's a wild ride.
I'm already intrigued. What's the core argument?
Essentially, the article traces how depictions of drunkards shifted over time. Early views, like those of Samuel Clarke in 1682, painted a terrifying picture. Spiritual damnation, demonic possession, even literal disappearance.
Wow, that's intense. So it wasn't just about physical health?
Exactly. The initial focus was heavily spiritual. Clarke's illustrations, by the way, are chilling. They depict drunks suffering gruesome fates. But then, the focus changed.
How so?
Later writers, like Edward Bury, emphasized the physical transformation. Drunkards weren't just possessed. They were physically deformed, resembling swine, their faces bloated and repulsive.
Interesting. So a shift from spiritual to purely physical consequences?
Not entirely. The spiritual element lingered, but it intertwined with the physical. Clarke, for instance, believed alcohol made the body malleable, easily shaped by Satan.
That's a powerful image. And how did this evolve further?
By the 18th century, the focus shifted again. The drunkard's body became associated with death itself, emaciated, skeletal, a walking corpse. Think Hogarth's Gin Lane. That's the visual representation of this era's anxieties.
Right, the stark imagery of decay. Did this perspective remain unchallenged?
Not entirely. The temperance movement, while using these images of decay, also faced pushback. A cartoon from Puck magazine, for instance, showed a temperate man enjoying a beer without suffering any ill effects, highlighting the debate around moderation.
So the narrative wasn't monolithic. There were counter-arguments?
Absolutely. The article highlights the complexities of the debate. While some emphasize the inevitable ruin of drinking, others question the extent of the damage, suggesting that moderation might be possible.
It's fascinating how the portrayal of the drunkard's body became such a powerful tool in shaping public opinion. It really underscores the link between visual imagery and social messaging.
Precisely. The article masterfully shows how these depictions evolved, reflecting changing social anxieties and medical understandings of alcohol's effects. It's a compelling look at the history of public health messaging and the power of visual rhetoric.
Absolutely. A really insightful piece. Thanks for breaking it down.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating story from Ars Technica about a high-level retirement at the Treasury Department. It's all about a clash, a real clash, between a longtime official and Elon Musk's, well, let's just say interesting new Department of Government Efficiency, or DOG. Intriguing, right?
Absolutely. A Treasury official retiring after a dispute with DOGE? That sounds like a major power struggle. What's the core issue here?
Exactly. The crux of the matter is access to the U.S. government's payment systems. We're talking trillions of dollars annually, the lifeblood of the nation's finances. DOG, under Musk's leadership, apparently wanted access. And this high-ranking official, David LeBrike, Fiscal Assistant Secretary, wasn't having it. A real showdown.
So LeBrike retired because of this conflict. Was there a direct order from Musk or Trump?
It's not explicitly stated as a direct order. The Washington Post reported that LeBrike had a dispute with Musk's surrogates. The requests for access came from DOGE after the election and were reiterated after Trump's inauguration. It seems the conflict escalated to the point where LeBrike chose retirement. It's a pretty significant move, considering his 30-plus year career. 30 years! That's dedication.
I see. And what's the rationale behind DOGE wanting access to these systems? It's not exactly transparent, is it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The article suggests it's unclear. Trump's announcement of DOGE mentioned streamlining government processes, cutting waste, and restructuring agencies. But accessing the payment system seems a bit extreme, even for that. It raises serious concerns about potential misuse of power and political influence. Very concerning.
Absolutely. It sounds like a potential security risk, too. These systems handle incredibly sensitive financial data. Giving access to a relatively new, untested entity like DOGE seems reckless, to say the least. Reckless.
You're right. The article highlights that these systems are usually managed by a small number of career officials. It's not something that should be easily accessible. A former Treasury official, Mark Mazur, even stated that these systems shouldn't be used for political purposes. Spot on.
This whole situation highlights a larger issue, doesn't it? The potential for political interference in crucial government functions. It's not just about DOGE, it's about the precedent this sets. A dangerous precedent.
Precisely. And the fact that Musk has been placing his surrogates in various agencies, like the Office of Personnel Management and the General Services Administration, only adds to the concern. It seems like a concerted effort to exert significant control over the government's inner workings. Concerning. This is a developing story, and we'll be sure to keep you updated as more information emerges. Thanks for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. Have a great day, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into the vibrant world of Paris P2P, a community dedicated to all things peer-to-peer. It's amazing what they're doing.
Absolutely. I've been following their activities for a while. So what's the core mission of Paris P2P? What makes them tick?
Essentially, they're a hub for anyone in Paris interested in peer-to-peer technologies. From conferences and workshops to hackathons and even co-working spaces, they're fostering a really strong community around P2P principles.
And it sounds like they're quite active, judging by their upcoming events. I see they have a festival planned for April 9th to 11th, 2025. A pretty big undertaking.
Huge! The Paris P2P Festival number 2 is completely free and includes conferences, workshops, a hackathon, and free co-working. They're even offering a $10,000 cash prize for the hackathon winners. That's a serious investment in the P2P community.
Wow, that's impressive. It shows a real commitment to nurturing talent and innovation in the P2P space. I also noticed a strong emphasis on open source. Is that a core tenet of their philosophy?
Definitely. The whole festival is open source, and their events are all about sharing knowledge and collaborating on projects. It's all about transparency and community-driven development. It's, a really beautiful example of the P2P ethos in action.
I see. Interesting. They have a pretty extensive list of sponsors too, which is great to see. It suggests a healthy level of industry support for their work.
Absolutely. They've got a diverse range of sponsors, from Birdie Technologies to Protocol Labs, showing the broad appeal of their initiative. It's a testament to the growing interest in P2P technologies.
And the speakers! They've got some really notable figures lined up, like Manfred Touron from Birdie Technologies and Loic Titran, who's known for his work in computer science. It's a pretty impressive lineup.
Exactly. And don't forget Zuma, the founder of Samurai World, who's also a key coordinator within the Paris P2P community. They're bringing together some serious expertise.
It's all very exciting. It seems like Paris P2P is doing a fantastic job of building a thriving community around P2P technologies. We're really setting a high bar for other similar initiatives.
I completely agree. They're not just hosting events. They're cultivating a real sense of community and collaboration. It's inspiring to see this level of dedication and passion for P2P. And the fact that they're so active on Twitter and Discord makes it easy to stay connected and involved.
Yeah, their online presence is definitely a key part of their success. It makes it easy for people to get involved, regardless of whether they can attend events in person. It's a really well-rounded approach.
So, to wrap things up, Paris P2P is a fantastic example of a thriving P2P community, organizing impactful events, fostering collaboration, and attracting significant industry support. They're definitely worth keeping an eye on. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into Millennium DB, a graph-oriented database management system. It's still under development, but already boasts some impressive features. Exciting stuff!
I'm really keen to hear about this. What makes Millennium DB stand out from other graph databases? Is it the dual support for RDF and property graphs?
Precisely. That's a huge advantage. It supports both RDF, using SPARQL, and property graphs, with its own custom query language, MQL, inspired by Cypher. This flexibility is a major selling point. Think of it. You can choose the model that best suits your data and query needs.
That's a powerful combination. But, are there any limitations? I mean, it's still under development, right?
Absolutely. The SPARQL support isn't fully comprehensive yet. Some features like updates beyond insert and delete data, named graphs, and the from clause aren't implemented. There are also some interesting deviations from the SPARQL specification regarding language tag handling and lexical representation of numeric data types. But these are actively being worked on.
So what about the build process? How difficult is it to get Millennium DB up and running?
It's pretty straightforward on x86-64 Linux. They provide clear instructions, for installing dependencies using apt. Mac users with Apple Silicon are also covered. For other systems, Docker is the recommended route. They even have a Docker file to simplify the process. It's all pretty well documented.
That's good to hear. And how about querying the database once it's set up? Is it a command line affair, or is there a more user-friendly interface?
Both. You can use a web browser interface at http://localhost port 4321/ after starting the server, which is pretty convenient. Or, for more control, you can send HTTP requests directly. They even provide a curl script for executing queries from files. Very flexible.
I see. So it's a client-server model. That's a standard approach, but I wonder about scalability. Has that been considered in the design?
That's a great question. The documentation doesn't explicitly detail scalability benchmarks, but given the focus on performance and the use of modern techniques, I'd expect it to be reasonably scalable. It's something to keep an eye on as the project matures, though. Definitely something to watch.
Right, it's early days. But the fact that they're openly documenting the limitations and deviations is a positive sign. It shows transparency and a commitment to improvement.
Absolutely. That transparency is crucial. It allows the community to contribute and helps manage expectations. The project is clearly aimed at researchers and developers interested in contributing to graph database technology. It's a fascinating project to follow.
Definitely. The dual model support, combined with the active development and open approach, makes Millennium DB a promising project worth keeping an eye on. Thanks for the overview.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time with more exciting tech updates. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into Google's recent announcement of a voluntary exit program for its U.S. platforms and devices employees. It's a pretty significant move, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's definitely raising eyebrows. A voluntary exit often sounds better than a layoff, but it feels like a thinly veiled cost-cutting measure, especially given the context. What are the key details?
Right. The memo, reportedly from SVP Rick Osterloh, offers severance to anyone willing to leave. Osterloh framed it as wanting a team deeply committed to the mission. But the timing is suspicious.
Suspicious how?
Well, consider this. Google merged its Android and hardware teams last year, ostensibly to boost AI integration. Then, a few months later, the CFO announced a focus on cost efficiencies. This voluntary exit program feels like a direct response to those cost-cutting pressures.
I see. So it's a way to reduce headcount without the negative PR of outright layoffs? A clever strategy, but not very subtle.
Exactly. And it's not like Google's hardware division is struggling that much. Their Pixel phone sales hit a record high last quarter, according to Counterpoint Research. Still, it's nowhere near Apple or Samsung levels.
Right, the Pixel's market share is still relatively small, but a record high is a record high. So this move seems more about proactive cost-cutting than a reaction to immediate financial trouble.
Precisely. It's interesting to note that employees had even started a petition urging Pichai to offer a voluntary buyout before resorting to layoffs. They clearly sensed this coming.
That's a fascinating detail. It shows a level of employee awareness and perhaps a bit of anxiety about the company's direction.
Absolutely. And for now at least, this voluntary exit seems limited to the platforms and devices team. Other divisions, like Search or DeepMind, haven't been affected yet.
So the suspense remains. This could be a canary in the coal mine for the rest of Google. A test run, if you will.
Exactly. A very interesting situation to watch unfold. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We'll keep you updated as this story develops. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving deep into running the massive DeepSeek R1 model on personal hardware, thanks to some amazing advancements. It's mind-blowing.
Absolutely. I've been following this development closely. The fact that we can even consider running a 671B parameter model on a consumer machine is incredible. What's the secret sauce?
The magic is a combination of factors. Unsloth AI's dynamic 1.58-bit quantization is key. They've compressed the model down to a surprisingly manageable 131 gigabytes, making it feasible for many. And then, Llama.cpp provides the engine to run it all.
So it's not just about the model size reduction, it's also about the efficiency of Llama.cpp, right? It's like a perfectly tuned engine for these compressed models.
Precisely. Llama.cpp is the workhorse here, allowing us to leverage the power of our CPUs and GPUs, even if they aren't top of the line. The tutorial walks you through installing Llama.cpp, either by downloading pre-built binaries or compiling it yourself. A bit of a choice there, depending on your comfort level.
And then, the model download. Hugging Face is the go-to place, right? They're hosting the quantized version of DeepSeek-R1.
Exactly. They provide the 1.58-bit version, which is the one we're focusing on. The tutorial even gives you a handy Python snippet to download it programmatically. No manual clicking required.
But I'm a bit concerned about the path management. It seems like keeping track of the directory structure is crucial.
You're absolutely right. That's a very important point. The tutorial emphasizes knowing your working directory. The model files download into a subfolder, and you need to specify the correct path when you run the llama.cpp server. One wrong character, and it all falls apart.
I see. So after downloading and installing everything, we fire up the llama.cpp server. That's where the real magic happens, right? It creates a local OpenAI-compatible API.
Yes. You run the Llama server binary, pointing it to the downloaded gguf files. There are several parameters you can tweak, like context size and the number of GPU layers to use. The tutorial provides excellent guidance on customizing these based on your hardware.
And then, the final step is connecting this server to OpenWeb UI. That's where we get the user interface, right? It's all about making it user-friendly.
Exactly. You add a new connection in OpenWeb UI's admin settings, pointing it to the llama.cpp server's local API endpoint. No API key is needed, which is pretty cool. Then, you can start chatting with DeepSeek-R1 directly through the OpenWeb UI interface.
This is amazing. But the tutorial mentions that performance will be slow, even on a powerful machine like the M4 Max. Is that a deal breaker?
It's a realistic expectation. We're talking about a massive model running on consumer-grade hardware. It's not going to be blazing fast, but the fact that it works at all is a huge achievement. It opens up possibilities for researchers and enthusiasts who don't have access to massive server farms.
I agree. It's a testament to the advancements in model compression and efficient inference engines. It's a significant step forward for open-source AI.
Absolutely. A huge thanks to Unsloth AI and the Llama.cpp community for making this possible. This is a game changer for accessibility in AI research. Happy experimenting, everyone. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating legal document. Apple Inc.'s emergency motion for a stay in a case against Google. It's a complex situation, but we'll break it down. The core issue is Apple's appeal of the court's denial of their intervention in the case.
So Apple wasn't initially a party to the lawsuit against Google, but they want to be? Why's that?
Exactly. The lawsuit involves allegations against Google, and Apple feels their interests are directly impacted by the potential remedies. Specifically, the plaintiffs proposed a remedy that would prohibit any contract between Google and Apple in which there would be anything exchanged of value. That's a pretty big deal for Apple.
A decade-long ban on any kind of deal? That sounds incredibly disruptive. So they tried to intervene, got denied, and now they're appealing that denial?
Precisely. They're arguing that the court's denial of their intervention will cause them irreparable harm. They won't be able to participate in the remedies phase, potentially missing out on crucial opportunities to defend their interests. They're worried about being left out in the cold while a remedy specifically targeting them is implemented.
Makes sense. But what are their chances of winning this appeal? The document mentions 4 factors courts consider when deciding on a stay pending appeal.
Right. The document lays out the 4 factors: likelihood of success on appeal, likelihood of irreparable harm without a stay, harm to others if the stay is granted, and the public interest. Apple argues they have a strong case on all 4. They claim their intervention motion was timely, and the proposed remedy directly harms them. They also argue that a delay is outweighed by the need for a fully developed record that includes their perspective.
Interesting. But the plaintiffs oppose the stay, right? What's their argument?
The document mentions that the plaintiffs oppose the stay and any expedited review. They also seem to be challenging even the limited participation Apple was initially granted, questioning the admissibility of Apple's proposed affidavits. This adds another layer of complexity.
So it's a battle on multiple fronts. Apple is not only fighting for intervention, but also to ensure their limited participation isn't undermined. This is a high-stakes legal battle with significant implications for the tech industry.
Absolutely. The outcome will have a major impact on the competitive dynamics of the search market and Apple's ability to negotiate with Google. The document also highlights the procedural issue created by Apple's notice of appeal, which divested the district court of control over aspects of the case involved in the appeal. This adds another layer of legal maneuvering.
It's a fascinating case study in legal strategy and the complexities of antitrust litigation. The document clearly shows Apple's determination to protect its interests, and the urgency of their request for a stay is palpable.
Indeed. And the request for expedited consideration underscores the high stakes involved. We'll be following this case closely. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion insightful. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a truly shocking report. Tesla, despite reporting $2.3 billion in income in 2024, paid 0 federal income tax. Unbelievable.
0? That's insane. I mean, we're talking about Tesla, one of the most valuable companies globally, run by the world's richest man. How is this even possible?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, or ITEP, analyzed Tesla's year-end financial report and found this out. They point to a few key factors. First, accelerated depreciation. Tesla aggressively wrote off the cost of its assets, reducing its taxable income.
Ah yes, a classic tax avoidance strategy. But how much did that save them?
ITEP estimates it saved Tesla a whopping $500 million in taxes. $500 million! And that's not all. They also claimed unspecified U.S. tax credits. Another $300 million shaved off their tax bill.
So they essentially used loopholes to avoid paying their fair share. This isn't just about Tesla, is it? This highlights a larger issue with the U.S. tax system, right?
Absolutely. The report emphasizes how the system, especially after the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, heavily favors corporations and the wealthy. It's a system that allows sophisticated tax dodging, making it, essentially optional for billionaires like Musk to follow tax guidelines.
It's outrageous. And the fact that this is happening under a second Trump administration. It's almost predictable, isn't it, given his history of pro-corporate policies?
Precisely. Trump's policies and the Republican Party's general stance have consistently favored massive tax cuts for corporations. Remember, the 2017 tax cuts slashed the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. This supercharged wealth inequality.
And now there are even proposals to cut it further, down to 15%? That's insane. It's like they're actively rewarding this kind of behavior.
It's incredibly frustrating. There are bipartisan proposals, too, that would give corporations even more tax-dodging tools. It's a system rigged against the average American. Tesla's case is just a stark example of how the system is broken. It's really something.
It's infuriating. The average tax rate for Tesla over the past 3 years is a mere 0.4%. 50 times less than the statutory corporate tax rate. 50 times! This needs to change. We need serious tax reform.
I completely agree. The article also mentions that Musk himself, despite his massive wealth, pays a far lower tax rate than the average American. This isn't just about corporate loopholes, it's about a fundamental inequality in the tax system.
It's a system that allows the ultra-rich to accumulate more and more wealth while the working class struggles. It's a recipe for disaster. And it's not just Tesla. This is a pattern we see repeated across many large corporations.
Exactly. And the consequences are far-reaching. This isn't just about the money. It's about fairness, about the future of our economy, and about the very fabric of our society. We need to demand better. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion insightful. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep, literally, into a fascinating article about a Casio F91W's unexpected underwater adventure. Get ready for some serious horological intrigue.
A Casio F91W? Seriously? That's the $15 watch, right? I'm intrigued. What makes this story so compelling?
Exactly. It's a $15 watch, the kind you'd find everywhere, from, less savory characters to everyday folks. But this one went 5,000 meters underwater.
5,000 meters? That's insane. What kind of pressure are we talking about?
Over 3 tons per square inch. Think a small hippopotamus on every square inch of the watch. It's mind-blowing.
Wow. So, how did this happen? Did some crazy diver just, strap it to their wrist?
Not quite. It was attached to a remotely operated vehicle, an ROV, used for deep-sea salvage operations. The ROV belongs to the U.S. Navy, and the whole thing was orchestrated by a watch enthusiast who works in deep-sea salvage.
So, a watch guy, working for the Navy, decided to test a cheap Casio at extreme depths? That's unexpected.
Totally unexpected. But here's the kicker. They filled the watch with mineral oil. Apparently, that makes it practically pressure-proof.
Oil-filled? That's a hydromod, right? I've heard of that. It's a pretty common modification for increasing water resistance. But 5,000 meters? That's pushing it, even with oil.
It absolutely is. And the article goes into the history of deep-sea espionage, tying this seemingly simple experiment to some really fascinating Cold War operations. Remember the Glomar Explorer?
Oh yeah, the ship designed to secretly recover a sunken Soviet submarine. That was wild. I read about that in Blind Man's Bluff.
Exactly. And the article connects that to modern-day undersea sabotage, like the Nord Stream pipeline explosions. It's a wild connection between a cheap watch, deep-sea operations, and international intrigue.
So the article is suggesting a link between this seemingly innocuous experiment and high-stakes geopolitical events? That's a pretty bold claim. I'm not sure I buy the direct connection, but the juxtaposition is certainly interesting.
I see your point. It's a bit of a stretch to directly link the two, but the article uses the Casio's deep-sea survival as a jumping-off point to discuss the broader context of undersea operations and their significance in espionage. It's a creative approach, even if the connection isn't perfectly airtight.
It's definitely a unique angle. The article is well written, though. It's engaging and informative, even if it's a bit sensationalized.
Absolutely. It's a great read, and the story of the Casio F91W's deep-sea journey is certainly memorable. A testament to the resilience of a $15 watch, and a reminder of the hidden depths of both the ocean and international espionage.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing this.
My pleasure. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into VoidDB, a transactional key-value database written in Go. It's generating some serious buzz, claiming to outperform some established players.
Yeah, I saw that. Under 2,000 lines of code, too. That's incredibly concise for a database. What's the secret sauce?
Precisely. The key is its focus and efficiency. It's designed for 64-bit Linux, which allows for some serious optimizations. They're claiming significant speed and size advantages over LMDB-Go, Bibolt, Badger, and GoLevelDeb.
Wow, those are some heavy hitters. Do they provide any benchmarks to back up those claims?
Absolutely. They've included benchmark results showing VoidDB significantly outperforming the others in put, get, and get next operations. For instance, VoidDB's put operation is almost twice as fast as LMDB-Go's.
That's a pretty bold statement. I'm curious about the methodology. Were the benchmarks run under identical conditions? Hardware, datasets, etc.?
That's a valid concern. The details aren't explicitly laid out, which is a bit of a drawback. We'd need to delve deeper into the code and the benchmark setup to fully verify the results. But the raw numbers are impressive.
I see. So it's a promising project, but more scrutiny is needed before we can definitively say it's a clear winner. What about its features? Is it just raw speed, or are there other compelling aspects?
It's transactional, which is crucial for data integrity. And it uses techniques like zero copy and MVCC, multi-version concurrency control, for efficiency. Plus, the small codebase makes it easier to understand and maintain. It's also described as using mmap for memory mapping, which can improve performance.
Zero copy and MVCC are definitely smart choices for performance. But being limited to 64-bit Linux is a significant restriction, isn't it? That limits its potential audience.
You're right, that's a major limitation. It significantly reduces its portability. However, given its performance claims and the potential for future expansion, it's still a very interesting project to watch.
Definitely. It's a fascinating example of how a focused design and clever implementation can yield impressive results, even within a constrained environment. The small codebase is also a huge plus for maintainability and understanding the inner workings.
Exactly. It's a testament to efficient coding. The BSD 2-clause license is also a plus, making it attractive for various projects. So, while it needs further validation and broader platform support, VoidDB is certainly worth keeping an eye on. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News.
Thanks for having me. Until next time.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of Git submodules and merges. Specifically, we'll unpack the complexities of merging branches that involve changes to submodules. It's a surprisingly nuanced topic, even for seasoned Git users. Get ready!
I'm all ears. I've definitely wrestled with submodule merges before. The documentation can be sparse, to say the least. So what's the core problem we're tackling?
Exactly. The core issue is predicting the outcome of a Git merge when a submodule's version differs across branches. Imagine you have a main branch and a feature branch, both referencing a submodule. You update the submodule in your feature branch, then try to merge it into main. Will the merge keep your updated version, the main branch's version, or something else entirely? The answer isn't always straightforward.
Oh, right. It depends on whether it's a fast-forward merge or a true merge, doesn't it? And the merge strategy used.
Precisely. A fast-forward merge is simple. If the feature branch is a direct descendant of main, Git just moves the main branch pointer forward. But a true merge, especially with the ORT strategy, default in newer Git versions, involves a three-way merge algorithm. This algorithm compares the submodule commits in 3 points: the feature branch, the main branch, and their best common ancestor. It's a bit like a sophisticated version control Venn diagram.
I see. So the three-way merge compares the submodule commit hashes, not the entire submodule content, right? That's more efficient.
Absolutely. It's all about those SHA-1 hashes. If the hashes match in the feature and main branches, the merge keeps that version. If they differ, and one matches the ancestor, the other version is chosen. But if all three are different, conflict!
And that's where things get messy. What happens then? Does Git automatically try to resolve it?
Git attempts an automatic resolution. If one submodule commit is a descendant of the other, it performs a fast forward within the submodule itself. It's clever, but not always foolproof. If no such descendant relationship exists, you're left with a submodule conflict that needs manual intervention.
Interesting. So even if a fast forward is possible locally, GitHub or GitLab might still flag a conflict, right? Because they use libgit2, which doesn't handle submodule fast-forwards in the same way?
Exactly. That's a crucial point. libgit2, used by GitHub and GitLab, doesn't proactively resolve submodule conflicts like the Git command line does. So even if your local merge works flawlessly, the remote merge might fail. This is why you often need to merge the main branch into your feature branch locally before pushing, to preemptively resolve potential conflicts.
That's a really important workflow tip. Though to summarize, understanding Git submodule merges requires grasping the three-way merge algorithm, the difference between fast-forward and true merges, and the limitations of libgit2 on platforms like GitHub and GitLab. It's a lot to keep in mind.
It is. But once you understand the underlying mechanics, you can anticipate and effectively manage these situations. Remember the key steps. Understand the three-way merge logic, check for descendant relationships between submodule commits, and be aware of the differences between local and remote merge behaviors. Mastering this will significantly improve your Git workflow, especially in complex projects.
Absolutely. Thanks for breaking it down so clearly. This has been a really helpful explanation.
My pleasure. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this deep dive into Git submodules enlightening. Until next time, happy coding.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into GameDev.City, a fascinating, invitation-only website curated for high-quality game development links. It's really interesting.
An invitation-only site, huh? That's exclusive. What kind of content are we talking about?
Think carefully curated links, not a massive content churn. They prioritize quality over quantity. We've got entries on everything from 2D cloth simulation in Odin with Raylib, pretty cool stuff, to the official release of SDL 3.2.0, a big deal for many game developers.
So it's more of a curated resource than a typical forum? Like a highly selective game dev-focused Hacker News?
Exactly. And they're not afraid to cover diverse topics. We see posts about Godot engine updates, open source pixel art upscalers, even reverse engineering. Call of Duty's anti-cheat. It's a wild ride.
Whoa, reverse engineering anti-cheat? That's bold. I'm curious, what's the community response like? Given the exclusivity, I imagine it's pretty engaged.
Well, many posts have 0 comments, which is, interesting. But the ones that do generate discussion seem to be really focused and insightful. The announcement about their Hacker News front page appearance, for example, sparked a lot of conversation about their approach to curation.
I see. So the lack of comments isn't necessarily a bad thing. It might reflect the high bar for participation. It's a curated community after all. Makes sense. What other noteworthy items did you find?
Oh, there's a lot. There's a post about Ludum Dare events being canceled for 2025 due to financial struggles. It's a bit sad, but it highlights the challenges faced by even established game jams. And then there's a bunch of open source projects, like a high-performance UI layout library written in C called Clay. Very impressive.
Right, the Ludum Dare news is definitely a bummer. But the open source stuff is fantastic. It shows the collaborative spirit within the community, even with the invitation-only aspect. It's a great way to discover hidden gems, you know?
Absolutely. And the site also features archived versions of all the links using archive.org, archive.today, and Ghost Archive. That's a smart move to ensure long-term accessibility. It's a really well-thought-out platform.
Yeah, that's crucial for preserving information. It speaks to their commitment to quality and longevity. So overall, GameDev.City seems like a valuable resource for serious game developers. A curated haven of high-quality information.
Precisely. A niche community focused on quality over quantity. It's a refreshing change from the usual noise. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into GameDev.City. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. We're diving straight into a breaking news story. A tragic plane crash in northeast Philadelphia. A Learjet 55, a medical transport plane, went down near Roosevelt Mall, resulting in a massive emergency response.
Wow, that sounds awful. What's known about the passengers?
6 people were on board. A pediatric patient, her mother, and 4 crew members. The child was receiving care at Shriners Hospital in Philadelphia and was being transported back to Mexico. Sadly, Jet Rescue Air Ambulance, the operating company, hasn't confirmed any survivors yet. They're waiting to notify families first.
That's heartbreaking. Were there any witnesses?
Oh, absolutely. Multiple videos captured the crash and subsequent explosion. One witness described it as earthquake-ish. Another saw a woman on fire. The impact was so intense that it caused a large fire, damaging vehicles and nearby buildings. It was a truly horrific scene.
I see. And what about injuries on the ground?
Yes, several people in the area were injured. Some with burns. Temple University Hospital received 6 patients, though it's unclear if all were from the plane or the surrounding area. 3 were treated and released. 3 remain hospitalized in fair condition. At least 1 firefighter was also hospitalized for breathing issues.
6 patients. That's a significant number. What's the official response been?
Mayor Parker and Governor Shapiro both held press conferences. They expressed their condolences and gratitude to first responders. The mayor urged residents to avoid the area and not touch any debris. A shelter was set up at Samuel Fells High School. The FAA issued a ground stop at Northeast Philadelphia Airport immediately after the incident. A massive emergency response was underway, with police, fire, and state troopers all on the scene.
And what about the investigation? What are they looking into?
A former Marine One commander, Captain Ron Alvarado, pointed out that the investigation will be crucial. They'll be looking at all available evidence: videos, flight recordings, air traffic control communications, everything to piece together what happened. It's a complex investigation, especially given the scale of the destruction.
It's incredibly sad, especially considering this happened just 2 days after another major aviation disaster in Washington, D.C. That must be weighing heavily on everyone's minds.
Absolutely. The proximity of these 2 events is deeply unsettling. It's raising concerns and prompting questions about aviation safety. The investigation will be under intense scrutiny, and hopefully, it will provide answers and prevent future tragedies.
Indeed. This is a developing story, and we'll continue to update our listeners as more information becomes available. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Our thoughts are with the victims and their families. We'll keep you updated. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating GitHub project, LilDump, a Lua data serializer. It's got some really cool features, and I'm excited to share them with you.
Yeah, I've been looking at this myself. The ability to serialize any Lua data, including circular references and functions with up values, sounds incredibly powerful. But how does it actually work at a technical level?
Right, so LilDump essentially converts any Lua data structure into a string representation of valid Lua code. This code, when executed using Lua's load function, reconstructs the original data. It's incredibly flexible. It handles everything from simple types like numbers and strings to complex structures like tables with circular references, functions, even with up values, metables, and even coroutines, although those require custom handlers.
That's impressive. So it's not just a simple serialization. It's a full-fledged recursive reconstruction. But you mentioned custom handlers for certain types. Does that mean it can't handle everything out of the box?
Exactly. While it supports most standard Lua types completely, user data and threads require you to define how they should be serialized. This allows for maximum flexibility. But it also means you need to write some extra code for those less common data types. It's a trade-off between ease of use and complete control.
I see. And what about security? Using load directly sounds a bit risky, doesn't it? I mean, you're essentially executing arbitrary code.
You're absolutely right to raise that concern. The developers acknowledge this risk. The current version uses Lua's built-in load function for deserialization, which does open the door to potential security vulnerabilities if the serialized data comes from an untrusted source. However, they've mentioned that a safe_load function is planned for a future release. That's a crucial improvement for production use.
That's good to hear. So what are some of the practical applications of this, beyond the obvious game saves, I mean?
Oh, there are tons. Think about configuration files, persistent data storage for applications, or even transferring complex data structures between different parts of a Lua program. The ability to serialize functions with up values is particularly useful for preserving state across different sessions or even different machines. It's a very versatile tool.
That makes a lot of sense. The examples in the README show how to serialize and deserialize tables with functions and circular references. It's pretty straightforward, actually. The code is well documented, too, which is a huge plus.
Absolutely. The documentation is excellent. It's clear, concise, and provides plenty of examples. The project also has a MIT0 license, which is very permissive, making it easy to integrate into other projects. And with over 70 stars on GitHub, it's clearly gaining traction in the Lua community.
It's definitely a project worth keeping an eye on. The planned safe_load feature will make it even more robust and secure. Thanks for highlighting this really interesting tool.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating development in the world of AMEI and copyright law. The U.S. Copyright Office has issued a statement. Purely AI-generated art simply can't get copyright protection.
That's a pretty significant ruling, isn't it? I mean, it's been a gray area for a while now. What's the reasoning behind this decision?
Essentially, the Copyright Office argues that current copyright law requires human authorship. Even incredibly detailed prompts don't grant the user enough control over the AI's creative process to be considered the author. The AI interprets the prompt, and the resulting artwork reflects the AI's interpretation, not the user's direct creative expression.
So even if you spend hours crafting the perfect prompt, iterating and refining it, you still don't own the copyright? That seems counterintuitive, especially given the level of skill some people have in prompt engineering.
Exactly. It's a bit of a blow to those who believe their prompt engineering skills constitute authorship. The Copyright Office uses the example of a Gemini-generated image, a cat smoking a pipe and reading a newspaper, where the AI ignored parts of the prompt and added its own elements, like a random hand. They contrast this with Jackson Pollock's work. He didn't precisely control the paint's placement, but he controlled the overall composition, colors, and texture. It's about the degree of human control, not the predictability of the outcome.
I see. So it's not about the complexity of the prompt, but the level of direct control the human has over the final output. That's a crucial distinction. But what about cases where AI is used as a tool, not the primary creative force?
That's where things get a bit more nuanced. The Copyright Office clarifies that using AI as a tool to assist in a creative process, like using AI to add 3D effects to an illustration, doesn't necessarily invalidate copyright. The AI-generated elements themselves might not be protected, but the overall work, if it retains significant human expression, can still be copyrighted. Think of it like using Photoshop. The software is a tool, not the artist.
Right, a helpful tool. So it's a matter of distinguishing between AI as a collaborator and AI as the sole creator. What about the case of Théâtre d'Opéra Spatial? That Midjourney image caused quite a stir.
Yes, that's a perfect example of the complexities involved. The creator fought to register it, but this ruling suggests that such purely AI-generated works are unlikely to receive copyright protection under current law. It highlights the ongoing debate and the need for clearer guidelines.
So the Copyright Office is essentially saying AI is a tool, not an artist, for now. But they also acknowledge that this could change as AI technology evolves, right? This is a rapidly evolving field.
Absolutely. The report suggests that future AI systems might allow for such a high degree of user control that the AI's contribution becomes almost mechanical. But for now, the bar for human authorship remains high. They're also planning further reports on the implications of training AI models on copyrighted works, which is another huge area of concern.
This is a really interesting and important discussion. It's going to have huge implications for artists, developers, and the legal landscape as a whole. Thanks for breaking it down for us.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the potential economic fallout of a hypothetical trade war initiated by President Trump as analyzed in a compelling piece from the Council on Foreign Relations. It's a complex issue, but we'll break it down, step by step. The core issue revolves around proposed tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China, right?
Absolutely. And the potential impact is huge. The article highlights that nearly half of all U.S. imports, over $1.3 trillion, originate from these three countries. A 15% reduction in overall U.S. imports is projected, a significant hit, even if the Tax Foundation estimates a $100 billion annual increase in federal tax revenue. But that's just one side of the coin, isn't it?
Exactly. The article paints a much more nuanced picture. While increased tax revenue is mentioned, the negative economic consequences are far more substantial. We're talking about disrupted supply chains, increased business costs, job losses, potentially hundreds of thousands, and ultimately, higher consumer prices. It's a real economic domino effect. Think about it. The automotive, energy, and food sectors would be particularly hard hit.
Yeah, the gas prices could spike, potentially by 50 cents a gallon in the Midwest, given Canada and Mexico supply over 70% of our crude oil imports. And the auto industry? A $3,000 increase on the price of a car? That's a massive blow to consumers.
You're right. And don't forget the grocery bill. Mexico is a major supplier of fresh produce to the U.S., and those tariffs would directly impact food prices. The article emphasizes that while the U.S. is less reliant on trade than some other industrialized nations, the impact on Canada and Mexico would be far more severe, given that trade constitutes about 70% of their GDPs. It's a huge asymmetry of impact.
That's a crucial point. The article uses charts to illustrate how heavily Canada and Mexico rely on the U.S. market. Over 80% of Mexico's exports go to the U.S., and a similar percentage holds true for Canada. A 25% tariff could slash Mexico's GDP by 16%, according to Bloomberg Economics. The auto industry in both countries would be devastated.
It's a pretty grim picture, isn't it? But the article also points out that China's dependence on U.S. trade is comparatively less significant. Their economy has diversified over the past 2 decades, reducing the impact of potential tariffs. Their trade with other nations has increased, lessening the blow. Interesting. Right?
I see. Interesting. However, the article doesn't ignore the possibility of retaliation. Mexico, for example, could impose its own tariffs, and the USMCA might even allow it. We've seen this before. Remember the retaliatory tariffs imposed by Mexico and Canada in 2018? This time around, U.S. fuel exporters, automakers, and pharmaceutical producers could be particularly vulnerable. It could be a real trade war.
You're absolutely right. The article highlights how retaliatory tariffs would disproportionately affect manufacturing-heavy states in the U.S., like Texas, New Mexico, Ohio, and Maine. It's a complex web of interconnected economies, and the potential consequences are far-reaching. It's a fascinating and concerning analysis.
It certainly is. The article concludes by suggesting that currency fluctuations could also play a role, potentially mitigating some of the impact. But the overall message is clear. These tariffs could have profound and potentially devastating economic consequences for all involved. A very sobering analysis indeed.
Absolutely. And that's a wrap for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for joining us for this in-depth look at the potential economic ramifications of a hypothetical trade war. We hope you found this insightful. Goodbye, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating study from Frontiers in Neuroscience that completely rewrites what we thought we knew about human ear muscles. Get ready, because this is a game changer.
I'm all ears. So what's the big revelation?
Well, for years, we've considered the auricular muscles, those muscles that let some people wiggle their ears, as essentially vestigial, useless leftovers from our primate ancestors. But this research shows they're far more active than we ever imagined.
Wait, you mean they actually do something beyond ear wiggling?
Exactly. The study used electromyography to measure muscle activity, while participants listened to audiobooks with varying levels of background noise. They found that the harder it was to hear the audiobook, the more active these muscles became.
That's incredible. So it's like our brains are subconsciously trying to prick up our ears to focus on the sound?
Precisely. It seems the superior auricular muscles, In particular, kick into high gear when we're straining to hear something. It's almost like a subconscious effort to improve our hearing, even if the physical effect is minimal.
Minimal? You mean the muscles aren't actually improving our hearing?
That's the interesting part. The researchers suggest the movements are so tiny they probably don't make a noticeable difference to our hearing. But the muscle activation itself seems to be a key indicator of listening effort.
So it's a physiological marker of how hard someone's concentrating, not a direct enhancement of hearing?
Yeah, that's the current interpretation. It's a fascinating finding because it opens up new avenues for research. Imagine using muscle activity as an objective measure of listening effort, especially in people with hearing impairments.
That's a really clever application. But wasn't the sample size relatively small in this study?
You're right, it was. The researchers themselves acknowledged that. They used only 20 participants without hearing problems. So more research with larger, more diverse groups is definitely needed to confirm these findings.
Absolutely. But still, this is a pretty significant shift in our understanding of these muscles. From vestigial to active participants in our auditory processing. That's amazing.
It really is. And it highlights how much we still have to learn about the human body. This research opens up exciting possibilities for future studies on hearing, attention, and even the evolution of our sensory systems.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. Thanks for breaking down this fascinating research for us.
You're welcome. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening. And we'll catch you next time with more exciting discoveries from the world of science and technology. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating project, Ruby WM, a window manager written entirely in Ruby. It's quite the undertaking. Intriguing, right?
Absolutely. A Ruby window manager? That's bold. But the description mentions it's experimental and potentially destructive. What's the deal?
Yeah, the author doesn't mince words. They explicitly warn it's experimental, might crash, and could even lead to data loss. Not for the faint of heart. It's a strong disclaimer, but it sets expectations. It's not meant for everyday use.
I see. So what is it then, besides a potential disaster waiting to happen?
It's a minimalist X11 window manager, under 1,000 lines of code. It focuses on tiling, but lets you have floating windows on specific desktops. No window decorations, though. Think super bare bones.
No decorations? Wow, that's Spartan. How does it handle input then? No keyboard shortcuts built in?
Exactly. It relies entirely on external tools like SXHKD to handle keyboard shortcuts. It uses X11 client message events for communication, so any tool that can generate those events can control it. Clever, but also means more setup.
So it's basically a framework for building your own window manager experience on top of it? That's a pretty unique approach. What about multiple monitors? Does it support that?
Not yet. The author only uses a single monitor, so that functionality isn't implemented. It's a work in progress, remember? Very much a work in progress.
Right. The screenshots show a pretty basic setup, as expected. So why did the author even create this thing? It sounds like more trouble than it's worth.
It started because the author was frustrated with how BSPWM handled floating windows. They wanted more control and flexibility, and decided to build their own. It's a testament to the power of Ruby, and a personal project, really.
I understand. A personal project, not meant for widespread adoption. It's interesting to see how someone can build something so minimal and functional, even if it's not for everyone. What about future development? Will the author add more features?
Maybe. The author is open to contributions, but only if they're small, easily maintainable, and don't compromise their minimalist goals. It's very much a "this works for me" kind of project, respectful of their time and effort.
That's a fair approach. So to run it, you need SXHKD and a recent Ruby version. The instructions look ... involved. It's not your typical window manager installation, that's for sure.
Definitely not. The author even suggests testing it in a VM first, safety first. The provided Shingatark snippet shows how to run it alongside SXHKD, and there's a section detailing the SXHKD configuration for interacting with Ruby WM. It uses custom events, _RWM, alongside standard EWMH events.
It's a niche project, but it's a fascinating example of what's possible with Ruby, and a willingness to dive into the lower levels of the X11 system. A testament to the power of personal projects and the desire for customization. Thanks for walking us through this unique window manager.
My pleasure. And remember, listeners, always back up your data before trying anything experimental. This is definitely one for the adventurous, and maybe those who enjoy a good challenge. Thanks for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into essential Python web security, a crucial topic for any developer. Let's get started.
Absolutely. I'm particularly interested in how this article tackles the OWASP Top 10. Are they all covered?
Yeah, the article claims to address all 10, although it doesn't delve super deep into each one. It emphasizes a holistic approach, focusing on security as an ongoing process rather than a one-time fix. That's a key takeaway.
Right, a defense in-depth strategy. Multiple layers of protection. Makes sense. But what about the practical advice? The article mentions specific Python packages, right?
Totally. It strongly recommends using the cryptography package for standard cryptographic algorithms and SQL Alchemy's string encrypted type for encrypting data at rest. For Django, there's Django encrypted model fields. It's all about using established, well-maintained libraries.
I see. And what about preventing injection attacks? That's a big one on the OWASP list.
The article highlights the dangers of directly including user input in queries. It advocates for using prepared statements to prevent SQL injection, and Python libraries like Pydantic for data validation. Smart stuff.
Good point. It also mentions zero trust architecture. How's that handled in the context of Python web apps?
The article suggests frameworks like OpenZD for implementing a full application-level zero-trust approach. It emphasizes not assuming internal traffic is inherently safe, a crucial shift in mindset.
Interesting. So beyond specific libraries, what are some overarching principles the article stresses?
Absolutely. The principle of least privilege is huge, granting only the necessary permissions. Deny by default is another, blocking access unless explicitly allowed. And of course, never storing passwords in plain text. That's a cardinal sin.
Yeah, I agree. The article also talks about using key derivation functions instead of simple hashing, right? To avoid rainbow table attacks.
Exactly. And it emphasizes the importance of two-factor authentication, 2FA. It's all about layering security. Plus, regular updates of Python, the OS, and dependencies are crucial, keeping everything patched.
Got it. What about tooling? The article mentions several tools, doesn't it?
Yes. It recommends pip audit for checking dependencies for CVEs, bandit for common security vulnerabilities, and rough for linting and static analysis. It's a whole ecosystem, and it stresses the importance of integrating these tools into CI/CD pipelines. Automation is key.
I see. So a combination of best practices, specific tools, and a security-conscious development process. It's a comprehensive approach.
Precisely. And remember, security is a journey, not a destination. Continuous vigilance is essential. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion insightful. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating paper on Arcasive, exploring the concept of gradual disempowerment due to incremental AI development. It's a chilling yet important read.
Chilling is right. I skimmed the abstract. The core idea seems to be that even without a sudden AI takeover, a gradual increase in AI capabilities could lead to humanity losing control, right? Not a dramatic sci-fi scenario, but a slow, insidious erosion of power.
Precisely. The authors argue that current societal systems, economies, governments, culture, are aligned with human interests, largely because they require human participation. Think about it. Economies need workers. Governments need citizens. Culture needs creators.
I see. So as AI replaces humans in these roles, the system's incentives shift. They no longer need to prioritize human well-being. It's a subtle but powerful point.
Exactly. The paper highlights this insidious feedback loop. AI displaces humans economically, giving companies more power to influence politics and culture, which further facilitates AI adoption. It's a self-reinforcing cycle.
But wouldn't we notice this happening? Wouldn't there be resistance?
That's a crucial question. The authors argue that the interconnectedness of these systems makes resistance difficult. Trying to use, say, government regulation to curb AI's economic impact might be countered by the economic power of AI-driven companies influencing that very regulation. It's a complex web of influence.
So it's not just about AI becoming super intelligent and malicious. It's about the systemic changes driven by even incremental improvements. The gradual shift in power dynamics is the real threat.
Yeah, precisely. The paper emphasizes that existing feedback mechanisms that ensure human influence will break down. A government primarily funded by AI-generated taxes might not prioritize its citizens' needs, for example.
That's a terrifying thought. And the authors mention that there's no concrete plan to stop this. No magic bullet, no easy fix.
That's the unsettling conclusion. They acknowledge the need for research into protecting human influence, better understanding these complex dynamics, and developing effective policy interventions. But they stress that simply aligning individual AI systems isn't enough. The problem is systemic.
It's a call for a much broader, more holistic approach than we've seen so far. We need to think beyond just technical solutions and consider the societal implications on a much larger scale.
Absolutely. The paper's strength lies in its focus on this systemic risk, a perspective often overlooked in discussions of AI safety. It's a wake-up call, urging us to consider the long-term consequences of seemingly incremental technological advancements.
It's a sobering but crucial analysis. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. This is definitely something listeners should check out for themselves.
You're welcome. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating article from Quanta magazine. Chatbot software begins to face fundamental limitations. It's all about the surprising limitations of large language models, even the most advanced ones like GPT-4 and Gemini. Intriguing, right?
Absolutely. I've been following this field closely, and the findings are quite unexpected. So what are these limitations, specifically? Are we talking about simple errors, or something more fundamental?
It's more fundamental than simple errors. The article highlights research showing that these models, despite their impressive capabilities, struggle with compositional reasoning. Think of Einstein's puzzle. Those logic problems with multiple interconnected clues. LLMs often fail to solve these, even relatively simple ones.
I see. So it's not just about the sheer volume of data they've been trained on, it's about their inherent architecture?
Exactly. Two research teams independently found evidence suggesting that the transformer architecture itself, which underpins most LLMs, has mathematical bounds on its ability to handle complex, multi-step reasoning. One team, led by Nohad Ziri, tested LLMs on tasks like Einstein's puzzle and basic arithmetic, finding significant limitations in their accuracy as the complexity increased. The success rate plummeted.
And the other team? What was their approach?
Binghui Peng's team took a more theoretical approach. Using computational complexity theory, they proved a mathematical limit for single-layer transformers, and then extended that to show limitations even in multi-layer models. It's not just about the size of the model. There are inherent limitations in how they process information.
So it's like hitting a wall, regardless of how much bigger you make the model? That's a pretty significant finding. Wow.
Precisely. They found that even scaling up the model doesn't necessarily solve the problem if you also scale up the complexity of the task. It's a fundamental architectural constraint. But, it's not all doom and gloom.
Oh, are there workarounds?
Yes. Researchers are exploring ways to improve things. One approach involves adding extra information to the input, like embedding positional information for numbers to improve arithmetic accuracy. Another is chain-of-thought prompting, where you provide a step-by-step solution within the prompt itself. This helps the LLM break down complex problems into smaller, manageable ones.
So it's like giving them training wheels, in a way? Interesting. But these are still workarounds, not a fundamental solution to the architectural limitations, right?
Correct. These techniques extend the capabilities of LLMs, but they don't eliminate the underlying mathematical limits. The article emphasizes that you can always find a compositional task complex enough to exceed the capabilities of any given system, even with these improvements. It's a fascinating challenge.
It really is. It makes you wonder what the next generation of AI architectures might look like. Perhaps something fundamentally different from transformers?
Absolutely. The article suggests that this research is a call to action for the ACI community to explore alternative architectures. The current limitations are a significant hurdle, but they also present an opportunity for innovation. It's a very exciting time for ACI research.
Indeed. Thanks for breaking this down for us. It's a complex topic, but you've made it clear and engaging.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time with more insights from the world of technology. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a truly alarming case of journalistic malpractice at the LA Times. It's a story that highlights the dangers of unchecked billionaire influence over media integrity.
Right, I've seen the headlines. It seems Patrick Soon-Shiong, the owner, has been interfering with the LA Times editorial process in a pretty blatant way. What's the most egregious example?
The most shocking example is the manipulation of an op-ed by Eric Reinhardt. Reinhardt submitted a piece sharply criticizing RFK Jr.'s nomination for Health and Human Services, even drawing parallels between RFK Jr.'s views and the actions of Luigi Mangione, who murdered a healthcare CEO. The piece was incredibly damning.
Wow, that's a strong comparison. And what happened to the op-ed?
Before publication, the LA Times, under Soon-Shiong's direction, gutted Reinhardt's core arguments against RFK Jr. They removed the crucial comparison to Mangione and, unbelievably, changed the headline to make it seem like the piece supported Kennedy's nomination. It's a complete inversion of the original meaning.
Unbelievable. So Soon-Shiong then promoted this altered piece?
Exactly. He even used EX Twitter to promote the rewritten op-ed, advocating for Kennedy's confirmation. It's a textbook case of propaganda. Reinhardt, understandably furious, publicly denounced the LA Times and vowed never to work with them again.
That's a devastating blow to the LA Times' credibility. It's not just about one op-ed, it's about the broader pattern of interference. This isn't an isolated incident, is it?
No, this is just the latest in a series of interventions. Soon-Shiong previously blocked the publication of an endorsement for Kamala Harris and demanded personal approval of op-ed headlines to avoid offending Elon Musk. He even suggested using AI to artificially balance opinions. It's a systematic erosion of journalistic integrity.
It's incredibly cynical. He talks about restoring trust in media, yet his actions are actively destroying it. It's almost ironic, isn't it? The irony is almost painful.
Absolutely. The article points out the supreme irony. Billionaires like Soon-Shiong, Bezos, and Zuckerberg constantly complain about the public's distrust of media. But their actions are the primary cause. They're not just influencing the narrative. They're rewriting reality. This isn't editorial oversight. It's journalistic malpractice.
And the consequences are far-reaching. The LA Times' reputation is severely damaged, and the public's trust in the media is further eroded. It's a dangerous precedent. This sets a terrible example.
Precisely. This incident raises serious questions about the future of journalism and the role of billionaire ownership in shaping the news. If Soon-Shiong truly wants to restore trust, he needs to look in the mirror, and no AI can fix this. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. Away. We'll be back tomorrow with more analysis of the tech world. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating development in the offshore wind energy sector. Shell's withdrawal from a major New Jersey project. It's a big story, folks.
A big story indeed. So Shell, an oil giant, pulling out of a massive offshore wind farm? That seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? What's the reason behind this?
That's exactly what makes it so interesting. Shell cites increased competition, project delays, and a shifting market landscape as the primary reasons. But, there's more to it than that. They also mention the regulatory context.
Regulatory context? You mean Trump's influence?
Precisely. Remember Trump's executive order on his first day in office? It essentially put a temporary freeze on new offshore wind leases and approvals. It also directed a review of existing leases, looking for ways to terminate them. This created a huge amount of uncertainty for investors.
I see. So Shell is essentially saying the risk is too high, the return too uncertain. But isn't offshore wind considered crucial for climate change mitigation?
Absolutely. It's a key component of transitioning away from fossil fuels. New Jersey, for example, aims for 100% clean energy by 2035. This Shell decision is a major setback. It's a significant win for those opposed to offshore wind, many of whom are politically motivated.
Right, the article mentions that Republican Representative Jeff Van Drew, who helped draft the executive order, called it a big win. It's a clear political victory, but at what cost? This isn't just about politics, it's about the climate.
Exactly. And that's the frustrating part. Shell's pulling out of a project that could power 1 million homes. A third of New Jersey's households is a huge loss for clean energy development. The article also highlights that other developers are watching this situation closely. This sets a worrying precedent.
It certainly does. The article mentions Ørsted, another major player, also abandoning a New Jersey project in 2023 due to economic concerns. Is this a sign of a broader trend? Is offshore wind becoming less economically viable?
That's a complex question. While offshore wind is still relatively expensive compared to other clean energy sources, it's becoming cheaper. But the uncertainty introduced by the executive order, as one expert pointed out, is a major factor. Strong policy support is crucial to attract investment in these projects. Without it, the economic viability becomes questionable.
So it's not just the cost of the technology itself, but the political and regulatory risks that are driving companies away. This highlights the importance of stable, long-term policies supporting renewable energy development.
Precisely. This isn't just about Shell, it's about the future of offshore wind in the U.S. The uncertainty created by the executive order has real-world consequences, impacting not only the climate, but also economic development and job creation. It's a complicated issue with far-reaching implications.
Absolutely. It's a cautionary tale about the interplay between politics, economics, and the urgent need for climate action. Thanks for breaking this down for us.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening. And we'll catch you next time with more insightful analysis of the tech world and beyond. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into the surprisingly simple world of training your own AI image model. Specifically, we'll be discussing a blog post detailing how to generate personalized AI images of yourself. It's way easier than you might think.
That sounds amazing. I've always been curious about the technical side of AI image generation. What's the core process involved?
The core idea is pretty straightforward. You need 3 things: a base model, a training technique, and a training dataset. Basically, a bunch of your own pictures. The author used the Flux model, which, while not state-of-the-art, is readily available and performs well enough for this purpose. He chose it over Stable Diffusion, which is more commonly recommended.
Interesting choice. Why did he opt for Flux instead of Stable Diffusion? Was it purely a matter of personal preference, or were there technical reasons?
He mentioned that Peter Levels, creator of Photo AI, had spoken highly of Flux's performance. So it seems like a combination of a recommendation from a trusted source and a desire to try something different. It also highlights the fact that there's more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak, in the world of AI image generation.
Right, and what about the training technique? I've heard of LoRa. Is that what was used here?
Yes, low-ray, or low-rank adaptation, was the chosen method. It's a clever technique because it only fine-tunes a small part of the model, making the process significantly faster and more efficient than training the entire model from scratch. The author even invented a unique trigger word, XiZu, to associate with his training data. Clever, huh?
So XiZu acts as a key to unlock the personalized model? That's a really neat approach. And what about the training dataset itself? How many images did he use?
He used around 10 to 15 photos, emphasizing the importance of diversity in terms of expressions, scenes, lighting, and angles. He also noted that it's best to have only one person in each photo. The images were automatically captioned using LLMs, eliminating the need for manual labeling. A huge time saver.
That's efficient. So where did the actual training take place? On a powerful local machine, or in the cloud?
Initially, he considered training it locally, but quickly realized his hardware wasn't up to the task. He also briefly considered using a cloud GPU server, but ultimately chose Replicate, a GPU rental service with pre-built training recipes. This made the process incredibly streamlined.
Replicate sounds like a great solution for simplifying the process. Did he use any specific recipe on Replicate?
Absolutely. He used the Ostris/Flux dev-LoRa-trainer recipe. The most important parameters were the input images, a zipped folder of his photos, the trigger word, XU, Hugging Face repository ID and token, and an auto-caption prefix. He also mentioned a helpful YouTube tutorial that walks through the process in detail.
And after training, where did he store the model? I assume it's not just sitting on Replicate, right?
He saved it to Hugging Face, a platform for sharing AI models, making it easily accessible and integrable with other tools. This is optional, as Replicate also saves the model. But Hugging Face offers better long-term access and collaboration possibilities. The trained model is a large file, about 180 megabytes.
Makes sense. So once the model was trained, how did he use it to generate images? Did he use Replicate again?
Yes, he used the Lucatico/Flux dev-LoRa recipe on Replicate for inference. The key parameter here was the HF_LoRa field, pointing to either his Hugging Face repo ID or a direct link to the trained model on Replicate. He emphasized the importance of including the trigger word, XU, in the prompt to get the desired results.
And what were the results like? Did it perfectly replicate him in every image?
The results were mixed. Sometimes the model produced images that strongly resembled him, while other times the resemblance was less clear. He found that adding extra details to the prompt, such as age and other descriptive information, significantly improved the results. He also noted that including other people in the image often led to strange merging of features.
So it's not a perfect system, but it's still pretty impressive for the ease of use and low cost. How much did the whole process cost him?
Training 3 models, 1 for himself and 2 for his kids, cost him around $7.50, and generating images costs about 3 cents per image. Overall, he spent just under $10 on the entire experiment. A very affordable way to explore a 50-image generation.
That's incredibly cheap. It sounds like a fun and relatively inexpensive way to experiment with AI image generation. Thanks for summarizing this fascinating article.
You're welcome. And remember, listeners, if you're interested in diving deeper, the original blog post provides detailed instructions and links to all the necessary tools and resources. This has been Tech Bytes in News, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes in News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating history of the Xerox Alto and its recently released source code. It's a real blast from the past.
Absolutely. I've been waiting for this. The Alto, a machine that predates the PCs we know today, right? What makes its source code release so significant?
Precisely. The significance is monumental. The Alto, developed at Xerox PARC in the early 70s, wasn't just a computer. It was a precursor to almost everything we use today. Think graphical user interfaces, the mouse, Ethernet networking. It was all there. And now, we have access to the original source code.
Wow, that's incredible. So what kind of applications did it run? What could you actually do with this revolutionary machine?
Oh, it was surprisingly advanced for its time. It ran Bravo, the first WYSI-WYG word processor, imagine that. Plus, it had drawing programs, both vector and pixel-based, and even an email client called Laurel. It was a complete office suite, decades ahead of its time.
A WYSI-WYG word processor in the 70s? That's mind-blowing. And the hardware? What were the specs like? I'm curious about the limitations, too.
Well, by today's standards, it was pretty modest. It had a 128 kilobytes of RAM, a 2.5 megabytes removable hard drive cartridge, and a 606 by 808 pixel display. But remember, this was the 70s. The real innovation wasn't in the raw power, but in the user interface and the networking capabilities. It had Ethernet, connecting Altos together into a local network with a laser printer and a file server. Think about that. A networked office environment in the 1970s.
Amazing! So the source code release. What's available? Just the operating system or more?
It's quite comprehensive. The release includes source code for the operating system, written in several languages like BCPL, Mesa, Smalltalk, and Lisp, utility programs, applications like Bravo, and even the networking software, PUP, which was a precursor to the Internet protocols we use today. It's a treasure trove for historians and programmers alike.
I can only imagine the insights we can gain from studying this code. It must be a goldmine for understanding the evolution of software engineering. Did they use any version control system back then?
That's a great question. I don't believe they had anything like the sophisticated version control systems we use today. It's a testament to the ingenuity of the developers that the project was even completed without them. The sheer scale of the project is impressive, considering the limitations of the time.
Definitely. This is a huge contribution to the computer science community. Thanks for shedding light on this incredible piece of history.
My pleasure. It's truly inspiring to see how far we've come, and the Altos source code is a powerful reminder of the innovative spirit that drives technological progress. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into Australia's groundbreaking under-16 social media ban. It's a massive shift in online safety regulation, and we'll be unpacking the details. Exciting stuff!
Absolutely. I'm particularly interested in the enforcement mechanisms. How will they actually manage to verify the ages of millions of users?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The E-Safety Commissioner, Julie Inman Grant, highlights three main age verification methods: government-issued IDs, behavioral signals, and biometrics. But the government ID route was scrapped due to privacy concerns.
Right, I read that. So what about biometrics? Facial recognition seems like a natural fit, but also raises privacy red flags.
Exactly. There are concerns about bias and accuracy in facial recognition. But get this. Grant mentioned an AI-based system that analyzes hand movements to determine age with a 99% success rate. Wild, huh?
Hand movements? Whew! That's incredibly innovative. But how does that even work?
Apparently, medical research shows hand movements correlate with age. Think subtle differences in speed, dexterity, and the way someone makes a fist or a peace sign. It's a fascinating approach. I'm still processing that one.
It's certainly unconventional, but the article also mentions pushback from social media companies, citing concerns about free speech and driving kids to unregulated parts of the internet.
That's a valid concern. Grant uses a compelling analogy. We don't ban swimming in the ocean, we teach water safety. Similarly, this isn't a total ban, but a restriction aimed at keeping kids in the safer waters of regulated platforms, while acknowledging the existence of the darker corners of the internet.
I see. It's about responsible regulation, not outright prohibition. But the article also highlights the mixed research on the link between social media and teen mental health. Doesn't that cast some doubt on the law's premise?
That's a great point. The research is indeed mixed. However, Grant argues the law focuses on the addictive design and dark patterns of social media, not necessarily a direct causal link to mental health issues. It's about mitigating potential harms, even if the correlation isn't perfectly clear.
So it's a preventative measure, aiming to curb potential risks before they escalate. But what about the practical implementation? How will they actually enforce this?
That's where the hefty fines come in, up to nearly $50 million for non-compliance. The onus is on the social media companies to verify ages and remove underage users. It's a significant shift in responsibility. A bold move, for sure.
It certainly is. And the deadline is December 10th, 2025. A lot needs to happen before then. This is going to be a fascinating case study in online safety regulation.
Absolutely. This is a global conversation, with implications far beyond Australia. The world is watching to see how this unprecedented law plays out. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We'll keep you updated on this developing story. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a truly remarkable feat: the conquering of Donkey Kong's infamous kill screen after a staggering 44 years. Unbelievable.
44 years? That's longer than I've been alive. What exactly is this kill screen, and how was it finally beaten? I'm buzzing with anticipation.
Right. So the kill screen in Donkey Kong is a point in the game where, traditionally, it was thought to be impossible to progress. It's a programming quirk, a limitation of the original game's design. It's not a game over screen in the traditional sense. It's more like hitting a wall in the code. The game essentially stops.
So it's a software bug, essentially? A glitch that prevents further gameplay? Fascinating.
Exactly. And what makes this even more incredible is that the solution involved exploiting incredibly precise timing within the game's internal clock. We're talking about manipulating delays down to fractions of a second, consistently, for an extended period. It's mind-boggling precision.
So how did they manage to do it? Did they use some kind of advanced technology or cheat codes? I mean, 44 years is a long time to crack a code.
No cheats involved. It was pure skill and an incredibly deep understanding of the game's inner workings. The player, through meticulous practice and analysis, learned to precisely control these tiny delays in the game's timing. They essentially found a way to navigate around the limitations of the code. It's a testament to human ingenuity.
I see. So it wasn't just luck, but a mastery of the game's mechanics at a level most of us can't even imagine. Amazing! Was there a lot of trial and error involved?
Oh, absolutely. Years of dedicated effort, countless hours spent studying the game's code, and probably a lot of frustration. The technical write-up available online details the intricate timing involved. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's seriously complex stuff.
I can only imagine. This sounds like a story that deserves to be told and retold. It's a triumph of human perseverance and a fascinating look into the hidden depths of classic video games. It's a legend in the making.
Indeed. It's a reminder that even seemingly insurmountable challenges can be overcome with dedication, skill, and a deep understanding of the underlying systems. And it's a great story for the gaming community, especially for those who love the technical aspects of game design. It's inspiring.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic achievement, a true testament to the enduring appeal of classic games and the passion of the speedrunning community. A truly remarkable story.
And that's all the time we have for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Donkey Kong and its recently conquered kill screen. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating piece by Ger Wang, a Stanford professor, on the limitations of generative AI in art. He argues that current Gen AI art tools are, frankly, unimaginative. Intriguing, right?
Absolutely. I'm eager to hear this. He mentions Suno, an AI music company, and their CEO's claim that most people don't enjoy making music. That seems like a pretty bold statement, doesn't it?
It is. Wang cleverly points out that the struggle, the process, is often what makes an activity meaningful. It's not about effortless creation. It's about the journey. He uses the analogy of mountain climbing. You wouldn't take a helicopter to the summit, would you? The climb itself is part of the experience.
Exactly. He's essentially saying that Gen AI art tools, by automating the creative process, are selling helicopter tickets to the summit of artistic expression. They bypass the crucial learning and growth that comes from the struggle. A very insightful critique.
Yeah. He even shares a personal anecdote from his early days, a pivotal moment at a house party, where a guitarist challenged his plans to build an automated music composition engine. The guitarist simply asked, "What's the point?" That question completely changed his perspective.
Wow. That's powerful. It highlights the importance of intrinsic motivation in art, not just the end product. It makes you think about the value of the process itself. It's not just about the destination, it's the journey.
Precisely. He contrasts this with the current trend of Gen AI tools that prioritize ease and efficiency over the creative process. He even mentions a student project, auto-riz.ck, which uses AI to play cheesy saxophone music when it detects a seductive glance. It's completely useless, but utterly brilliant.
I see. That's a great example of using AI playfully. focusing on the process and exploration rather than a purely functional outcome. It challenges the notion that AI should only be used for productivity. It's about the joy of creation, not just the result.
Yeah. He quotes John Cage. What we need is a computer that isn't labor-saving, but which increases the work for us to do. That's a radical idea, isn't it? It's about embracing the challenge, the friction, as part of the creative process.
It is. It's a counterintuitive approach, but it makes a lot of sense. It's about valuing the struggle, the learning, the growth that comes from the process. It's about the human element.
Exactly. Wang worries that companies like Suno, by focusing on frictionless convenience, are creating a generation of passive consumers rather than active creators. He's concerned about the potential for cultural stagnation.
That's a valid concern. It's a trade-off between ease of use and the potential loss of something valuable. The intrinsic rewards of the creative process. A very thought-provoking piece.
He concludes by emphasizing the importance of embracing the challenges of creation. Even with AI, he wants his daughter to appreciate the value of the struggle, the joy in the process. A powerful message for the future. And that's it for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving deep into Hydro, a fascinating new distributed programming framework for Rust. It's really exciting stuff.
Yeah, I've been hearing whispers about Hydro. What makes it so special? Is it just another distributed system framework? Or is there something truly innovative here?
Oh, there's definitely something innovative. It's built for Rust, which immediately gives it a huge advantage in terms of memory safety and performance. But beyond that, Hydro focuses on what they call distributed safety, ensuring correctness by construction. Think of it like Rust's approach to memory management, but for distributed systems.
So it's like a safety net for distributed programming? That's a huge deal, considering how complex and error-prone distributed systems can be. How does it achieve that?
It uses a data flow approach, powered by their DFIR runtime. Instead of actors or RPCs, it uses choreographic APIs. This means computations are described as expressions and functions that span multiple locations. It's a more declarative style, making it easier to reason about the overall system behavior.
Declarative programming for distributed systems? That's a clever approach. It sounds like it simplifies the development process significantly. But how does it handle deployment? Is it a headache, like many other distributed systems?
Not at all. Hydro integrates seamlessly with Hydro Deploy. It uses a two-stage compilation process. First, you write a standard Rust program, which generates a deployment plan. This plan is then compiled to DFIR, creating individual binaries for each machine. Zero overhead abstractions, they claim. Then, it's deployed to the cloud using that plan and resource specifications. Pretty slick, huh?
Zero overhead abstractions. That's a bold claim. I'd like to see some benchmarks to back that up. But the two-stage compilation process sounds very efficient. It's like separating the concerns of development and deployment.
Exactly. And it's already been used for some impressive projects, including implementations of two-phase commit and Paxos. They're even working on a distributed systems standard library to provide these protocols as reusable components. That's huge!
While the approach sounds promising, I'm a bit cautious about the correctness by construction claim. No system is truly perfect, and even with the declarative approach, subtle bugs can still creep in. Thorough testing will still be crucial.
You're absolutely right. No system is perfect, and rigorous testing is essential. However, the framework's design aims to minimize the potential for common distributed system errors. They're also actively developing the documentation, so hopefully that will help address some of the potential pitfalls. They even have a GitHub repo for bug reports and feedback.
Good point. Open source and community involvement are key to improving any system. So overall, Hydro seems like a very promising project. Nation. The combination of Rust's safety, a declarative approach, and streamlined deployment makes it a compelling alternative to existing distributed systems frameworks.
Absolutely. It's definitely one to keep an eye on. And remember, the documentation is still a work in progress, so be prepared for some rough edges. But the potential is immense. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Hydro. Goodbye, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating piece from the Library of Congress, a 1900 broadside with a powerful message. It's short, but incredibly impactful.
Right, I've seen the text. It's a single sentence, right? Something about seizing the day, but with a distinctly 1900s flavor.
Exactly. The core message is, I expect to pass through this world but once. If, therefore, there be any kindness I can show, or any good thing I can do my fellow being, let me do it now. Let me not defer nor neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. And to call to action. A reminder of our mortality, urging immediate positive action. Powerful stuff.
Yeah, it is. But it's also interesting that it's a broadside. That suggests a specific context, doesn't it? Was it mass-produced? A political statement, perhaps?
Absolutely. The fact it's a broadside, printed for free, points to a desire for wide dissemination. It wasn't just a personal reflection. It was meant to resonate with a community. The Library of Congress metadata suggests it's from Brooklyn, 1900. Think about the social context. The turn of the century, rapid industrialization, maybe a sense of social reform brewing. This broadside could have been part of that movement.
I see. So it's not just a philosophical statement, but a social one, too. It's almost like a manifesto, a concise call to action for a better society. Interesting.
Precisely. The kindness I can show and good thing I can do aren't limited to individual acts. In 1900, that could easily extend to social justice initiatives, charitable work, or even political activism. It's a very broad, yet intensely personal appeal.
Right. And the I shall not pass this way again, that's a pretty blunt reminder of mortality. It's not exactly subtle, but that directness might have been effective in its time.
Yeah. The lack of subtlety is key. Broadsides were designed to grab attention quickly. You needed a message that would resonate instantly, and this certainly does that. It's a powerful, memorable phrase.
It's almost a little preachy, though, isn't it? I mean, the language is a bit formal, even for 1900. Could that have limited its impact on some people?
That's a valid point. The formality might have alienated some readers, but I think the core message transcends the style. The sentiment of seizing the moment to do good is timeless, and I think that's what made it so effective, even with its somewhat formal tone.
True. It's a simple message, but it's profound. And the fact that it's preserved in the Library of Congress speaks volumes about its enduring appeal. The metadata is also fascinating. The physical dimensions, the call number. It gives you a real sense of the artifact itself.
Absolutely. The metadata is crucial. It provides context, transforming a simple sentence into a historical document. It's a reminder that even small, seemingly insignificant items can hold immense historical and social significance. And that's what makes this broadside so compelling.
So, a simple sentence with a powerful message, preserved for posterity. A great example of how even seemingly small artifacts can tell big stories.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow for another fascinating deep dive into the digital world. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the daily roundup of Tech Bytes and News. See you again tomorrow. Goodbye.